Buying a home is hard, and I don't want to pretend that it's not hard. But buying a home is not impossible. Ring-a-ding-ding, you've reached the king. Big Tommy Egan, welcome to the podcast. For our listeners, this is a real treat because I can barely get this bloke on a phone call, let alone to get an hour in front of him with no distractions. Welcome, mate.
It's a big achievement. Thanks for having me on.
So, for the listeners who wouldn't know, you are the managing director. Is that what we call you? Owner, founder, builder?
Sure.
Of Avia Homes, which is, I know you don't like to say this, but is currently Queensland's 8th largest builder.
Yes. Yep.
Which is a hell of an achievement. You build a lot of homes for our clients. We obviously love the job you do, but I thought you'd be really great to get on the podcast, just to give kind of an expert point of view on a few different things, for first home buyers and building homes.
Sure. Yep.
But yeah, before we get into that, you've just had a new baby.
Yes. Yep. A boy, first in the family. So yeah, excited.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
How's it all going? Few sleepless nights?
He's actually better behaved than the first two kids, so it's not too bad. It's not too bad.
Don't tell them that.
Yeah, no, I'll remind them. No.
Okay, so for the listeners, let's begin with a little bit of background on you. So, how has this journey to Avia Homes come out? Like, what's your industry experience? How have you ended up here?
Yeah, I guess that's an interesting one. I haven't always been in property. I just had an interest in property. Background, I grew up, I guess, quite poor, and always wanted to, I guess, make a difference, invest money, and just, change the way that I wanted that my family around me lived. So at 18 years old, I decided to build a house. And that was my first sort of step into, making a change and wanting to do something different to everyone around me. So
you built your first house when you were 18.
Yeah.
Let's unpack that. How did you get enough money to do that?
Yeah, so it was quite unique. I left school in grade 10. I knew that I didn't want to go to uni or do anything like that. So I guess, looked at what I actually want to do. And I go, okay, I want to go work. I want to go earn money. So I left school in grade 10, started working. I was a concreter, weird enough. Out of all things. And then I was a fridgie for a little bit. And
What's a fridgie?
Basically installing air conditioners.
Okay.
And from that point, I was 17. I had an opportunity to work in a local quarry. I'm from up north in Townsville. So I ended up getting a job in the mines, and I wanted to invest my money straight away. So as soon as I started earning money, I was 17. When I turned 18, I was able to get a loan. So I had saved that period of time from 17 to 18, and then I went and bought a block of land with stocklands up in Townsville, and then built my first house.
So you're 17, 18. I'm assuming you're earning reasonable coin working in the mines.
Yep.
Now, I know Lee at 17, 18 years old was definitely heading to the pub to shout all his mates and lose all that money.
Yep.
So what did you have a strategy like as to how you saved, why you saved? Like how did you keep the money is what I'm getting at.
Yeah, no, good point. I saved all my money actually, and I was so fixed on doing the opposite to my parents.
Yep.
And then any advice I'd gotten from them, sounds bad, but I wanted to do the opposite.
Yep.
So they said, don't buy a house. Don't do any of that. And I'm like, I'm buying a house now. Because I just thought if I do, I didn't know. I didn't have the knowledge, right? I didn't have a mentor. I didn't really understand what to do with money. I wasn't educated in that whatsoever. I just thought I'm going to save cash and I'll do something with it. And I just thought I was interested in property. It was an interest to me.
Yeah.
And I just thought I want to do something like that. But it was I didn't have a grand plan or anything like that. It was very much made up. But I just remember when I was considering should I not do it, I asked my parents and they said, don't buy.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I'm definitely buying this house. And that was the start of it all.
It's an interesting thing. So I often talk to younger people who I mentor, and I just say, if there's something you want in life, go and find someone who's already got it. And if you do what they do, there's a fair chance you'll end up with what they've got or something closely approximating it.
Yeah, totally agree. Yep.
Yeah. Because from my point of view, and I actually had an argument about, not an argument, a discussion about this on a podcast I was a guest on the other day. So podcast is called Triathlon Therapy, just reminiscing about old triathlon times. But the hypothesis that I put forward is, my belief is that we're all born reasonably equal, right? Like, there's some obvious differences, like you're 6'10" or whatever you are. Like, no matter what I do, I'm never going to be as tall as you.
You're half the man I am. But yeah.
I've got no comeback to that. I am. But as far as like aptitude and ability, it's my belief that if you take anyone, and we were talking about a world champion triathlete, so his name's Jan Frodeno, widely regarded as the GOAT of triathlon, which will mean nothing to most people. But my theory is, if you look at the work that he's put in, and I'm not saying just last week or last month or last year, I'm saying if you go back like over his 15, 20-year career, plus when he was a junior, if anyone puts in the same amount of work, dedication, commitment to, exercise, eating, all of that all of that stuff, what I'm suggesting is not that you'll be the best in the world, although you may very well end up the best in the world. But what I'm suggesting is, with the same amount of work and dedication, you will at the very least become elite, world class, to the point where if people are outside of like the triathlon world, there will be no noticeable difference. So my theory is that, it's work rate. It's about actions. And anything anyone else has got, you can have something very similar to it if you're prepared to put in the work. But, interestingly here, what we're talking about, which is kind of, it's the same thing but different. If you want what they've got, do what they do. But similarly, if you don't want what they've got, do the exact opposite, right?
Yeah.
So, and let me know if you're all right talking about this. You said your parent, you grew up in a poor household. So I'm assuming that you saw some quite bad money habits. And lifestyle habits. Would you mind talking through like some of those things that you saw where you went, hey, this isn't for me?
Yeah, I think the tipping point, like I'll go straight to the tipping point. I was like 14 and we didn't have enough money to afford fuel to drive down to the local swimming hole. It was like half an hour away. And there's 9 siblings of us, so there was a lot.
You've got 9 brothers and sisters. Holy Jesus!
Yeah. All there's step and half and all that. So we're not all
blended
under
family.
the one. Yep, blended family. So
that's a lot of people. You all lived in one house?
7. Yeah, the others were older. Yep.
I'm an only child. This type of thing is just unimaginable.
So put it into this perspective. Me growing up until I moved out, I shared a room with 3 other boys, double bunk beds in one room. That's
puberty would have been interesting.
Yeah. Yes. So it's completely different to what once again seeing my kids grow up, it's complete opposite. It's interesting. Where for me, I didn't have my own room ever.
Yeah,
that never happened. But once again, you learn things. There's good things I took away from that. There's definitely good things that experience made massive changes for me. But in regards to when I seen, probably something that stuck out to me the most, and I remember this very vividly, I was like 14 and I just couldn't understand. I'm like, to my stepfather and mother, and I just said, what do you mean we can't drive down to the local swimming hole because we can't afford fuel? No, like, this is who we are, son. We don't earn a lot of money, and this is just how it is. And I'm like, but you can earn more money. Yeah, but that's not who we are. And it was just a big sticking point. I'm like, but you can choose what you actually want to do. And you can go and create anything that you want. And so for me, that was a big catalyst to go, I'm going to do the opposite of this. And I want to, regardless of where I come from or surrounding. And once again, that was drummed into them. You're 50 years old, you're paying off your car, you can't afford the fuel in it. You don't own any properties, you have no investments, you own nothing. And this is who you are? I don't think so. So I challenged that. And obviously as a young kid, don't talk back to me. But I just kept it to myself after that point. And it was, you just have these moments in time where you just go, okay, well, I'm going to use, it was just, every now and then you have something that really stands out to you. And that was a standout point to me. And I'm like, I want to do something different. So, but even going back probably before then, we couldn't ever have treats. We could never go to the shop to buy lollies. So I always just checked, when am I old enough to earn money? Always asked my parents. And they said, 11. And I was going to primary school at the time and I was in grade 6 or 7. And I just remember asking teachers and other kids. And one kid said, no, I'm delivering pamphlets.
Yeah.
You're 11. I'm like, that's what it is. I'm going to earn money at this moment. So weird enough, I ended up not doing pamphlets. I ended up doing newspapers.
Yeah.
So I started delivering newspapers around, and I called the company up, got it all set up. I just phoned from the house phone and try and get it lined up, and they took me on, and I did all the local areas so I could just walk. But unknown to me that I would have this impact on all my siblings, because I was in the middle, but a couple of them moved out already, so I was like sort of the second or third oldest. I was 11. I started earning $100 a week. I was killing
it.
I'm 11 years old. I started earning money, and I wanted to just have things for myself because my parents couldn't do it, and I wanted to just go, well, if they can't, I can. So 11 years old, I started doing that, and then all my siblings then joined on. So I then started organising, okay, well, you're going to take this area here, this suburb.
Like a little newspaper delivery empire.
This suburb, and there's 5 of us now.
Pim
took
over Townsville newspaper delivery.
And we ended up taking over like these certain areas, and then I was basically just managing them. I was still doing my own deliveries as well, but sort of took it on that point. And then every year I remember I was like one of their largest newspaper deliverer that they had. So they used to give me 4 tickets a year to go to the movies for free. That was my reward. So, it's just small things like that. But I started to accumulate money then. I read Robert Kiyosaki's book. Lady at the church actually gave it to me when I was around that age, because she's seen what I was doing.
Rich Dad Poor Dad you're talking about.
Yeah, so she's seen, but I read the adult version and then she gave me the kids version, but she gave me the adult version first.
Yeah.
But she gave that book to me because she had seen, okay, this guy this kid at the time wants to make a change. And she put her time every now and then. She'd actually talk to me about things. She did well for herself, owned a lot of property, invested very smart, owned her own dentist practice down the road. She's very switched on, but she was, once again, knew that I didn't have any guidance, but she was trying to give me something in the little time that she had. So that book did change. That was the first, I'd never read a book. I wasn't interested at school. And that book did make a big change for me. And once again, I started saving from that point of view.
Yeah, second best book you've ever read, right?
Yeah, correct. Yeah, obviously the one behind us is a big hit.
Rich Dad Poor Dad. It's Robert Kiyosaki. Have you watched any of his recent stuff?
Yeah, look, I don't really follow the guy.
Yeah.
Now, he was just, back then anything was great, and not that I have an issue with it, but I don't follow him religiously compared to others that I would follow. But back then, that made an impact. Yeah,
so Rich Dad Poor Dad is a phenomenal book, and what I really like about it is, it talks to what we're talking about, is what the difference between people who are good with money and people who aren't. It's just about their habits and what they do.
Mm-hmm.
And, if you show me your habits and show me the 5 people you hang around most, and I'll show you your life.
Mm-hmm.
unfortunately, his more recent stuff, I find it really clickbaity and very negative, and I don't know, just for me it kind of sullies that amazing impact that he had on the world. But anyway, look, maybe I'm wrong.
He's put bold predictions out there and stuff like that, and I'm just like, I know.
They're very sensationalist.
I understand what you're saying. Yeah.
Anyway, by the by, how amazing that you had someone who saw something in you and decided to, feed that little fire. How amazing that you had that and you decided to follow that rather than, listening to the family who was trying to pour water on it. With our clients, sometimes we have some touchy, uncomfortable conversations where, like, we hear some of the advice that people are getting from their parents, and I listen to it and I'm like, I don't want to say this, but I'm actually not sure that person has your best interests at heart. Or perhaps, maybe they do have their best interests at heart, but because it's unknown to them, they don't encourage people to break out. Actually, the more I think about it, that's probably
they
more
think
accurate.
They're doing the right thing.
Correct.
They're protecting them. There's fear. It's unknown. All those things happen. They're not consciously aware that it's significantly impacting their life, the advice that they're giving. But these people, some people actually don't know, and they go, just be safe, don't risk it. This is unfortunately all they know. So it's not like they're consciously aware that they're deliberately trying to hold them back. They just don't want their kids to, you got 50 grand saved, don't spend it. That's not good advice. You need it to be doing something for you. But yeah.
Well, it's like the experiment with the gnats or the fruit flies or whatever they are, small jumping insects that were put into a jar. So they put them into like a masonry jar and they screw the lid on top and they leave them there for however long. Let's call it a couple of days. And obviously the let's call them gnats. They're in there and they're jumping and they hit the lid, right? And then they take the lid off after a couple of days, and for the rest of their lives, these gnats won't jump any higher than what the lid was, even though they've got the ability to do it. And it's like a self-limiter that's been put on them.
Yep.
And then in human beings, that gets passed down from generation to generation. And to break out of that mould is... I just got the world of respect for it because it's so hard to do. Because everyone tells you no. It's a big deal. Yeah. It's interesting you had this thing with organising. That's something that I had as a kid as well. Like I would get an idea and then I'd try and organise everyone so like as a unit we could get whatever it is done. Fortunately, I was a bit of a shit of a kid, so I was organising bad things, not good things. But yeah, it was interesting to hear that because I had that same thing where I wanted to organise everything. Anyway, we kind of we haven't got off track. We've just digressed a little bit. So
regards the question was, how did you, in regards to property and the journey? But I was going right back.
Yeah. No, it's good.
Which it starts with property.
I love this, right? Because our clients are trying to get their first home. And, whether you're 18, you're 30, or, you're 45, like the first home emotional journey is still very much the same. Yep. So I think it's great to talk through. And I think it's super impressive that you bought a house at 18. Super impressive. So tell me about that.
Yeah, so was definitely unsure. Once again, trusted a lot, didn't do a lot of research.
Yep.
Funny enough, the builder was brand new at the time. It was a franchise from Brisbane up to Townsville. So him, the local owner was operating in the space previously in some capacity, I assume, but I wasn't aware. They didn't have a long-standing brand. I was at work on the mines and the radio was on, and they said, what we're going to do is, as an incentive, as part of the franchise launch, this is just honestly how it came about as well. I was saving my money, waiting to buy property. Am I going to buy existing? Am I going to buy new? I didn't know what it was. I was trying to educate myself. And at the time, as a part of their launch, they said, we're going to pay your repayments over the life of the build so we can cover it so you're not out of pocket, essentially. And I thought, that's a pretty good deal. And I'm like, okay, well, that works out to how much are my repayments. If it goes over this schedule, I'll call a bank and see the breakdown and how much that saves me. And I went and met with a couple of other builders, but I did get along with them well, and there was an incentive there. Everything else seemed very similar, but there was an incentive there. I'm like, oh, well, that's what led me to that point on that day. It was literally by 2:00, and I'm going, all right, I'm going to go there at lunch. And it was funny enough, the development was right across the road from work.
Yeah, okay.
So I'm just kind of going to drive over there and put my name down to at least get some incentive.
Yeah.
So that started. Had no idea what I was doing. I picked a house. Probably there was a mistake I made, which was a good lesson. It wasn't going to be my forever home, and it was something that I wanted to start with, but actually made the house bigger, spent a lot more on it than I really should have. I overcapitalized on the property.
Yep.
But at the time, I'm like, bigger's better, got a bigger block, got a bigger house, added a lot of extras to it, probably spent an extra $80,000 at the time that you just, comparable wise, it's not going to earn you any more rent, or it's not going to, all it is going to cost me more money to pay the bank down. And then my repayments were higher. So that was a lesson for me at that later on down the track. Now, prior to the house finishing at about fixing stage, the builder actually collapsed. Yes, so
Geez, that would have that would have rattled you as an 18-year-old.
Yes, that was interesting. I had no idea what to do.
And I bet your parents were there. I told you so. I told you so.
Yes, and there was actually things not completed on the property that I'd paid for. So the fixing claim was claimed, but the work wasn't actually done. But I was just, invoices were sent to me.
Yeah,
very
you
trusting.
Don't know any better. Signing,
and their whole fixing wasn't done either, and the banks paid the money. So I'm in a tough situation now.
Yep.
So I had to finish the house myself on that point of view, because a builder, I didn't want to go the insurance. I didn't have time to wait. So I had to essentially get the works done myself. And then I had to call trades, other friends, and we had to finish the house. And then the final payment from the bank then went to me, but I had to fund all the other bits and pieces that the bank had paid for that weren't done. So I didn't go down the insurance road. But at the time, once again, I didn't know how to research a builder. I go, well, what do? You look online? Do they have any reviews?
Yeah.
That was it. I didn't know what to do. And I didn't know the difference between inclusions. The house that I was getting ended up turning out different to what I wanted. There was things, I got a solicitor to look at the build contract, but they more specialise in land at the time.
Well, that's all the conveyancing solicitors really do, is they facilitate the land transfer. And
the build is essentially on you. The build contract, they'll give you some items, but they don't allowances, the amounts, is it going to cover it or not? There was no clear-cut things that I had questions about. So it was an interesting time because, they put up a fence return on one side and the rest of the house wasn't fenced. They just put the posts there, and I'm like, that was my allowance? Wouldn't you allow for the entire fence? But I didn't know how to read those finer details, those terms and conditions, So, look, it didn't matter anyway because we never got to the finishing stage of it. But, look, it taught me a lot about it in that as well, because how things were finished on the facade and the materials throughout construction, the photo was a representation, but it actually wasn't the specifications that I was getting. So it was just, once again, having no idea, not the right questions to ask.
All right, there is so much to unpack with this. So... Let's begin at the first thing that I heard there. So, incentives. Now, at the time, you saw the incentive and you went, oh, this is great, I'm getting money for free or whatever. Now, having worked in the industry, you would know that you paid for that incentive. So
guaranteed.
Yeah. So someone...
It was factored into the build price.
100%.
Correct.
Yeah, and look, I talk about this in the book quite a bit. If someone is essentially bribing you to work with them, You're paying for that. That will be part of the cost. It's been built into it. But B, I find it a little bit concerning when people are having to literally bribe you to get you into the door. Why do you need to bribe? Why aren't you getting referrals from existing clients? Why doesn't the work you do stand on its own? Mm-hmm. So I think that would have been, for me, that's the first alarm bell that I heard in the story you were telling. And
it's very clear now. Very clear to me now, because again, I see those things and I go, what's going on for the business?
Yeah.
And how's that sustainable?
Yeah.
What service can you provide? What staff can you pay? If you genuinely are doing the incentives, one, why are you doing the incentives? Business isn't going that well. Why?
Yeah.
What's going on for you?
Yeah.
Are you just, every client you build for have no referrals because it's a terrible experience?
Exactly.
Yep. Yeah, there's right now, like now I see that, and that's where we focus on a lot of differences. But back then, no idea.
Yeah, how would you know? And it's not just that you're 18, it's that you're inexperienced. I don't think it would make a difference if you're 18 or 36. You know, research, like we all do the same thing. We're, a couple of things in Google, they've got a website, I guess that looks all right, unless you know better. Like,
well, back then, that's all it was. Maybe you would have looked Facebook and Facebook had reviews, but back then, it would have just been a website. Yeah. Essentially. Yeah.
Yeah.
Before anything came up.
Well, now you have quite a bit more experience. Mm-hmm. What would you suggest that first home buyers in the same situation do?
Yes.
So what I'm talking about here is, sorry, just to be clear, is more the research. What would you do to avoid the problem, and then we can talk about what you'd do if a problem comes up.
And anything you do, there is some level of risk. It's how we de-risk it. Mm-hmm. How for myself, I always just go, there's outcomes here. How can I de-risk this as much as possible to make sure that I get this outcome? Mm-hmm. And a part of that is you wanting to go build a house.
Yep.
Where do you start?
Mm-hmm. Where do you start?
And well, if we looked at, I think, majority of the population, they start looking at facades of houses or floor plans, and it's not really the right way to start at all, because that's not relative to your situation. That might not fit on the block of land that you're looking at. That might not be affordable for you based on the design, but you're looking at a set of plans. And that's why, for my business, none of it is, here's a photo of a facade with a house price, here's a photo of a floor plan advertised, because how is that relevant to someone?
Yeah.
I just, the way that that's delivered doesn't make sense to me, because where do you want to live? What size family do you have? And all those, this is how I qualify those things. If it was for myself, how much do I want to spend? So if I was somebody else, how much can I afford? And once again, this is going to open up other areas that we go into with finance and things like that, and who to go to as an expert. And I have comments on that point of view. I wouldn't say going direct to a bank is your option. I think it's probably, for me and what I've seen, I think going to a broker is far better in the options available to you than ever going direct to a bank.
Why?
I just think the options, depending on so a broker essentially, and this is just, again, my understanding, and a bank can offer only the bank's current policies and current interest rate. Yep. A broker, depending on who they're licensed through and they've got finance options through, they could have, let's say, 40 different banking options. Mm-hmm. Based on your scenario, they've got a lot more available options for you than just the one.
Yep.
And unless you're going to go to each bank yourself and go and talk to them and spend weeks doing that, it's a lot of time. And you also, because you're a one-off customer and the broker does a lot of business, the broker actually gets better deals than you can direct. Yep. So for me, having multiple houses in my portfolio, the banks direct can't actually offer the same interest rate a broker can, because the broker writes a significant amount of volume with that bank. Mm. They're entitled to benefits to look after their clients, so they remain with the broker. So just, once again, I'm getting quite detailed with it, but keeping it more simple, the broker has a lot more options available to you. If you want to understand your situation, they can pull it up and go, well, here's 6 banks that fit the different policies, and they're all different. So you can afford different amounts depending on the bank and different deposit requirements, which ultimately will then can get you to buy a house 2 months earlier, 5 months later, all these conditions come into play.
So lending policy, just for our listeners, is essentially the rules that a bank has around lending. And lending policies change definitely from bank to bank, but even within the bank, they can change on a daily basis. And banks tweak their policies for the types of loans that they want to give out. So, a very simple example is one bank may have a policy, we don't do construction loans.
Correct.
Where another bank's got a policy that we love it. Another bank may have a policy that if you do overtime, we only count 80% of that as income. Another bank may have a policy that says as long as you've been there for 6 months and it's consistent, we take 100% of that, whatever it is. So policies are the rules around lending. And this is why your circumstances may not change at all. And you can go to one bank and they say, no, we can't give you a loan, and here's a whole heap of unreasonable jobs you need to do in order to get a loan.
Yep.
Where you go to another bank and they go, sure, we'll give you a loan right now.
Yes.
And it's all around lending policy.
And different grants available, some funded in different ways, which can be to your advantage or not.
Yep.
But a lot of people aren't aware of it. A broker can help educate people on that, where depending on the bank, the staff aren't even aware of some of their policy and requirements. So that this buyer's missing out and told they can't buy, they speak to someone else, oh no, you can buy. Well, that's a massive difference.
And you can even have this with brokers, right? So you might go to a broker who doesn't specialise in first home buyers and isn't aware of particular banks' policies because they're changing all the time. And they say to you, and I think Matt and Katie, who we had a couple of customers we had on the other week, they went to a broker who said, oh no, you need to save another $30,000 to get into a house. And then they spoke to one of our brokers, shameless plug. But they spoke to one of our brokers who said, no, that's not the case. We'll just get you on the first home loan deposit scheme.
Yep.
And you've got enough money.
Yeah, because it's covered. I think, and this is just in some of the brokers' defence as well, I think some of them, depending on who they've got licenses with, they might not actually have some of those banks that do those options. So they legitimately don't have that option.
Yep.
But they should be advising clients, I don't have the facility that I can't look after you, but I can recommend you to someone else, but they're not normally going to say that. But some of them aren't even aware because it depends. They might have 30 banks, but out of those 30 banks, 2 of them might not be doing the scheme. And so then it's not going to work for them. So or once again, and I agree with you, depending on what your product, what you specialize in, is it investment? Is it owner occupied? Is it existing loans? There's so many different things that commercial, it's completely different. And as we know, brokers go, I only do this one thing.
Yeah.
Cool. I'm not even aware. I could write the loan, I could do it. But again, it's not my space. I don't know all the products available. So what brokers have, and geez, we're going deep into the weeds now. But I thought we were going to get into the meat rather than detail.
So what most brokers have is they have what's called an aggregator that they go through. So the broker is signed up with the aggregator, and then the aggregator has the agreements with all of the banks. But the aggregators don't necessarily have all the lenders on their panel.
That's
right?
correct.
They've only got particular lenders. And then if the broker wants to write a loan with a different bank that's not on the panel, they need to get accredited with that bank, which, as I understand it, I've never had to do it, but just as I understand it, is a real pain in the ass to do.
And it's time, and they don't understand different it's just that a lot of the time they won't do it. They'll just go, I'm not licensed through them, I'm not going to add that because the aggregator doesn't have it.
Yeah,
that's fair enough.
Well, I don't. Look, it's fair enough if you. People are people, right? And, we all kind of go for the path of least resistance. So whilst I understand why they don't do it, which boils down to laziness a little bit, like I can't be bothered. And if you can't be bothered, that's fine. We can't be an expert in all things.
Yep.
But if you then go to the client and say, hey, this can be done, You just need to go here to do it.
Yep.
That I'm all for. But if you tell a first home buyer, no, you can't buy a home, I hate that, because we have...
Oh, it's not the right advice in that point, no.
Yeah, and buying a home, but it happens all the time.
Agreed.
Like the number of people that come into us and say, we were told we couldn't buy a home. But you're a first home buyer. You've got no idea what's going on. And this is an expert, so you think, telling you that you can't buy a house. So you just accept it.
I think you have this as well. I have buyers tell me they went into the bank to get the loan. They couldn't. And the broker got this loan through the same bank they were denied from.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
And I've heard that multiple times. So they've gone direct to the bank. I'm not going to say the bank's names, but they've gone direct. They've gone to see the loan, officer, let's call it, on what they can do and afford. And then 3 months later or a week later, I wouldn't even add the time on, but a couple of weeks later, that broker's been able to get a deal and things across the line, because that person sitting there was unaware of some of the other products that the same bank offers that the broker's aware of. So this, and that's between some people going in, making that the only option. I went and seen the bank, I can't afford it. They now think they can't afford a home. Years could go by. 10 years could go by and they've gone, that's just the only person I spoke to. It's like, well, first of all, on a part of this journey that you mentioned, where to start, speak to multiple people, maybe. That would be some good advice. Yeah. Instead of just going to see the bank and then that's it.
Well, again, like I'm just going to shamelessly plug my book here. No, but again, in the book, like I've got this thing that I say over and over where it's stay positive, be determined. So, and this is exactly what I'm talking about. If someone says no to you, don't accept no. So, okay, I can't do it. What do I need to do it? And get an action plan from them. Or if they say no, go and see someone else. Right? And if you're getting the same story everywhere, well, you know you've got some work that you need to do.
And what do I need to do to then get to that point? Correct.
Yeah. And this is, so I say this a lot, and I don't want to come off, buying a home is hard, and I don't want to pretend that it's not hard. But buying a home is not impossible.
No.
So every single person, I can sit down with you and there will be one of three if you can't buy a home, there will be one of three reasons that you can't do it, right? It will either be because of your servicing, which is income versus expenses. It will be because of your deposit and costs, which is your savings, or it will be because of your credit history.
Yep.
Whichever one of those three things it is, there's a way to fix it.
Yep.
Now, the way to fix it might not be easy, and income's the hardest one, right? So let's say you're earning, I'm just going to make numbers up. You're earning $90,000 a year, and you actually need to be earning $125,000 a year. And you may sit there and go, well, that's all well and good for you to say that, but I can't get a pay rise for 35 grand. Fair enough. Most people can't. What you can do, however, is you can potentially find someone who would be prepared to go in on the purchase with you. We've had loads of clients do that. So buy with friends, sisters, family members, whatever it is. But the point I'm getting at is it may not be easy, but there is a solution to every problem if you put your solutions hat on.
Yep.
But the problem a lot of first home buyers have is they just go, oh, well, I was told no. And to your example, if we leave it 10 years, so we were told no 10 years ago and we never went back, I can almost guarantee you property prices have doubled since then.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah. So that problem's cost you, if you waited 10 years from now, that problem will probably have cost you $600-700 grand.
Yep.
Or believing that professional will have.
Yeah. And that's where, I think, going off looking at house designs because you think building house, like go see professionals and talk to multiple people. I think the next step for me personally, what I would look at is, once again, that we were mentioning going to talk to professionals in this field.
Yeah.
And there's so much out there, and where do you start? Once again, instead of looking at designs, people can go and look at blocks of land. But again, this is where you would come across it all the time. Lee, I've secured a block of land. And this happens to me all the time. Okay.
Yeah.
Yep. You've secured it. All right, let's have a look at the block. Now, before I look at this, what is your outcome? I want a house this size because I've got 4 children and I want it to be this size with this many rooms. Okay. And you only can make a house so small without until you've got to start removing rooms as affordable as you can. So next minute you look at the block and go, one, the block's not the right dimensions. That house isn't going to work on there. It's too small, the shape of it, or there's other conditions by local council that you can't design a house, and that's why it looks really cheap. The other factor is there could be conditions on the block of land that you're not aware of. Now, what that could be, there could be the basics of bushfire requirements, acoustic requirements, and technically to build a house and get it through council, there could be $50,000 of extra items that you've not factored in. That's why the land's cheap. Or you've just secured a block. The other thing that can happen to buyers, which is where this can become a massive issue, and it's not something you see all the time, but it does happen, where a client will go buy a block of land and it's dead flat and it doesn't have those items. So they think, okay, well, it's safe. And someone sold it to me. I'm like, okay. And then what land information have you actually looked at, and have you spoken to professionals about this? And just outside of builders, there's other professionals you can talk to. But have you consulted a builder before signing the contract or going uncon? But now you own the block of land. Little do you know that there's a sewer line that runs directly through the middle of the block. And now you've got a massive issue. Yeah. Because you can't just go and build on that block of land. And this, unfortunately, I've had clients call us and own these blocks of land, and then I'd look at all the land information. I said, do you understand that there's massive easements running through your block? And council, one, may allow to build over sewer, which is you've got to put a lot of infrastructure into maintaining that if you're going to build the house over a part of it. But if it's directly down the middle and council won't allow some of the areas to be built on, you've got a massive issue. And that's unfortunately where some clients go, I've got the block of land, but again, they still haven't consulted anyone. They've done things before actually consulting the right people. So, there are unfortunate circumstances that can happen as well. So I think not just going to look at a design or design a house or look a block of land. Before making any of those decisions, I think you actually need to go see a professional on what you're actually doing, get some advice. And those professionals, which you can touch on,
it's us. Yeah, we're the professionals.
But this is where they can assess your whole situation before you do anything, before you commit any money, before you make any decisions. I'll let you go.
Yeah, before you commit any money is the big one. So another thing which comes up all the time is you start going out west of Brisbane, Ipswich way, and you've got mining underlays everywhere.
Yes.
And talk me through the consequences of that.
It can get real bad really quick. So basically, if you've got mining influence, depending on the engineering report and the mining influence report from the council, and yes, the blocks will look 150, 200 grand cheaper. And let's just be clear to everyone out there, no one's going to sell something $100,000 or $200,000 less than everything else unless something's wrong. Sometimes people are enthusiastic, but it's just never going to happen. Yeah. Why would you do that? Yeah. Let's just think, if it was you, would you do it? Yep. Doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense. So,
if something's too good to be true, it often is.
Yeah. If it doesn't make sense, it doesn't make sense. You don't need to try and manipulate it and think of it how you want to. It's what are the facts? It's 150 grand cheaper. Cool. So how the impact of that would work is, on a build perspective, on mining overlay, most of the extreme cases is that you can't do slab on the ground. And then that means you'd have to do pole homes, and then going down the cost of that. So you essentially your house is off the ground by so many meters. And then on massive posts, essentially you're looking, put it this way, 95% of builders won't touch it. They won't even do it.
Yeah, they just won't build it.
They refuse to do it. So your options available to you to even construct the home are very limited. Most will just go, I'm not interested. Yeah. In a booming market like this, where builders are very busy and there's nice flat blocks that they can just build on, they don't have to spend months of engineering and time and, once again, specialist trades that don't work for them every day, because that's a risk for a builder's perspective.
Yeah.
How good can these guys actually do the job? Well, they don't do every job for me. So now me as a builder, I'm stepping out and going to use someone that I actually don't know. And there's a risk in that.
Yeah, so most people don't understand this with builders is you get stuck holding the baby for the work that your trades do.
Yeah.
So you need to have really good trades and trades that you can trust.
Yes.
Because if an issue comes up a year later and that trade's gone, like you're the one who's responsible for that mistake.
Well, they've been paid for the work.
Yeah.
So I'm correct. You want to make sure they've done the right job.
Yeah, and that's why you're and where you're talking about using specialist trades that you don't normally use, you won't necessarily have that level of trust. So you're like, there's too much risk associated with this.
You've got to
build.
go on recommendations. And this is where a lot of builders will go, I'm not going to do it.
Yes.
So now you're with the block of a lot of builders now, and for the builders to do it, letting everyone know you're going to pay a premium. Mm-hmm. You're not even just going to pay the extra cost.
Yeah.
For them to have a harder job to once again and taking these risks, the builder's going to allow more
an
margin.
asshole tax.
Yes. This is what's going to happen because the business is taking a substantial risk to build this home for you. Yeah. And unfortunately, it's not you as the client, but the builder doesn't want to do it. And if the builder decides to do it, there's a lot of risk involved, so they will. Your price will be substantially higher. And again, the other issue that you run into, which is, again, going to open up another area that we could dive into, but we won't today. But if you...
Who says we won't?
Sure, we can. I just know we don't want to digress too far. But if you buy the block and you do get a builder to do it, then you've got to get a valuation done by the bank.
Yep.
And for these extra build costs that the builder's doing, the bank or the valuer might not value the house what they could resell it for. So now you've got also an issue of you might need to put in more deposit, more of your cash, because the bank's not going to loan of what the current house value is, of what it's going to cost to build it. And that's a whole another area that you've got against you as well. So say you've got a builder that says yes.
Yeah.
And it's going to be $500,000 to build the house. Mm-hmm. What happens if the valuer goes, but that house, once it's built, is only worth $350?
Yeah, because we don't care that it costs you so much to build it. What we care about is the resale value compared to what else is in the area.
Yes.
We could do an entire podcast about valuations.
That's why I said we won't go too far. Yeah.
I actually might do it sometime because it's complicated. But yeah, for you. I was wrong. You were right. We're not going to go into it today.
But I think it was an important part to touch on where if someone is going, okay, well, you've got a price, you've got this, it's not just you that is going to determine if you can purchase this. It's the bank is going to send a valuer out to work out what is, and once again, their point of view and their risk. Just because the builder said it's 500, that doesn't mean the bank and yourself can sell it for that.
Yeah.
And so, that's a common issue.
Just for the listeners, because this may be terms that they've never heard before. So what happens when you're buying a house is the bank will send out a valuer to do a valuation of that property. So let's say I'll keep the numbers super round because it'll just make the maths easier. So we'll call it a $1 million property. And you're wanting to get an 80% loan, which would be $800,000. Again, I know this isn't relevant numbers for our clients. It's just easy maths. Yep. So if a valuer goes out and says, I don't think this is worth $1 million, I think this is worth $900,000, well, you can only get an 80% loan, not of your purchase price, of the amount the valuer said it was worth. So that would mean that you would only be able to get a loan of $720,000. I hope my maths is on point. Which the $720,000, there's an $80,000 difference between what you thought you were going to get and what they valued it at. And you've got to come up with that essentially in cash. Otherwise you can't complete the purchase. That's what a valuation is. That's what the impact of valuations are. how valuers come up with their numbers is really, that's what would take an entire podcast. It actually might be good to get a valuer on here one day. But yeah, for the purpose of this, we're just going to have to roll on.
Yep. But as you're seeing, there's so many steps to making all this come together.
Yeah.
To just buying a house. And it can be overwhelming. There's a lot to it, but you can simplify it. And making sure that you get the right people on board. And like you said, doing your research, and one of the things that you've mentioned previously on your podcast, and it's something that we speak about, if you're concerned about a builder or what, once again, people look at social media and they get wowed, and then they look at some reviews, and then a lot of builders over the last couple of years have removed their reviews. So you can't see any reviews now. So you then...
That's a little bit of a red flag, to be honest.
Agreed.
Yeah.
But again, the buyer doesn't know. What happens if the builder never put up reviews and you never looked beforehand? There's just questions. I agree with you, because if you want to be transparent like I am, I put it on there for that reason.
Yeah. If I was online dating, I'd definitely be swiping left on that.
I can imagine. But you've got that aspect where that's where buyers go. I did my research, but like any builder that has a license in Queensland, you can look up that license, and that's going to give you a lot more clarity on how many builds that builder's building, how many builds, how long have they been going for, who's the owners of those business, because you might think there's one, there could be multiple.
Hey, sorry to interrupt you. Before you keep going, let's get super specific on this.
Mm-hmm.
So where do I get the builder's license from?
Yeah, so where you get it on, builders actually, part of their license requirements is they actually have to advertise their license on all their branding. So their website, their cars, their emails. If they're not, they should be.
Yeah, so I get the license number,
mm-hmm.
and then what do I do?
Okay, so you get the license number, then you go to, you just type into Google QBCC license search. You then click the first thing that comes to the top, which is the qbcc.gov.au website, I assume that it is.
So what I'll do, I'll get Jerome to put this website in the show notes in case anyone wants it.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so we go on to the license search part of the QBCC website. Before we keep going, who's the QBCC?
So the QBCC is they're the governing body that license all builders in Queensland. Mm-hmm. And each state has a different body, but in Queensland it's called the QBCC. I can't remember the exact term of it's something.
Queensland Building and Construction Commission, something like that.
Commission, yeah, correct. And they're basically the ones that monitor our financial requirements.
Yep.
They're the ones that monitor our license, our contracts. They're making sure that builders are doing the right thing.
Okay.
So every builder in Queensland, no matter who it is, has to have a license with them.
Mm-hmm.
And from that point of view, once you get your license, you then have a history on that license, mm-hmm. and it's tracked on your license point of view. So you can look up that it's 15 pages or 20 pages, depending on what's on there, and you can get a lot more understanding about the business. So you just put that license number in the search engine once you're on the website. Yep. And then that company will populate the license.
So what sort of thing am I looking for mm-hmm. once I get this report? Because if I'm a first home buyer, I'm going to get this report and go, this is all gobbledygook. So
Agreed.
What should I be looking for?
Agreed. Look, the biggest thing clients are concerned about is, one, are the builders are going to finish my house? But two, more importantly, they're always worried about the quality of the house and warranties. Mm. They're going to go, are they going to finish the house? And are they actually, if something's wrong, are they going to fix it? Mm-hmm. That's what they're worried about. They're like, well, the bank's paying all themselves. They're paying for it all, and the house is finished. Are they actually going to finish it to the quality that they've told me? Mm-hmm. And if there's any outstanding, and we call it defects, and we can talk about what that term is, mm-hmm. but or after the property in 2 years, you want the builder not just to give you a great house now, but they've got to warranty it through the QBCC for 6.5 years. Mm-hmm. So that means you might see a builder advertising cheap, but doesn't help you if they're cheap and not around next year. Yeah, you've got 6.5 years of warranties through that builder, so you don't want them to go down. Yes, it goes through the QBCC, but going back to it.
So just to touch on this point here, mm-hmm. Were you about to talk about the were you referring rather to the QBCC building insurance should a builder go under?
No, yeah, look, yes, that's definitely there, but I'm saying if the house is already built,
Yeah.
then you would have to lodge that with the QBCC on warranties though, because the builder's no longer in place. So your insurance is covered for that. So it's your insurance before you start building. Building insurance is paid through the QBCC. So that means the buyer is always protected if the builder was to go while under construction or within the warranty period.
Yeah.
It's just you can't call the builder to get them out. You've got to go through a whole entire process, and the time frame can be substantial.
Two good points that you raise here, and I know I'm interjecting, so
Yeah,
I'll be
and
quick.
then I'll get on the next part of the license, yes.
Yeah. So with the insurance, in the event a builder goes under, your building will be completed, and if there's a price difference up to 250 grand, I think from memory, the QBCC insurance will cover that, so you're guaranteed your home will get delivered.
Yep.
And if there's any defects during the defect period, you're guaranteed that they will get fixed. But I think what you're driving at here is ideally, we just want to be avoiding this in the first place.
You want to avoid that.
Yeah.
And let's say the builder finishes the home, but because they're trying to undercut and run very cheap, they can't afford to run the business anymore. All your warranties over the next 6.5 years can't go back to the builder. It's got to go back to the insurance companies. So you as a frustrated home buyer, want items fixed around the house, that can take a long time.
Yeah.
Compared to going directly to the business and get somewhere out there that week.
It's almost like online shopping, right? So, you can get some stuff super cheap online, but it's 50-50 whether, it's even going to rock up, and if it does rock up, what the quality of it's going to be.
Yep.
But, if it's a $10 or $20 item, who cares? But when you're talking about a house, it's a house, it's a big investment. So why would you go bargain basement rather than getting something that is going to be really good quality?
That would lead me into a separate conversation that we can have straight after the license, because if I went down that road, there's very good points to make on that point of view.
I feel like you're telling me to stop interrupting. Okay, I'll be good.
That point I do want to recall back on.
Yep.
Because that's something that we can shoot off to. But just finishing the license perspective, and we'll move on. That's what buyers are concerned about, is the defects and the rectification of work.
Yep.
So on a bill, for instance, if work has been done at the house and I'm saying it's fine, and the buyer goes, it's not fine, they can contact the QBCC and they can get an inspector out.
Yep.
Now, the inspector then deems this is a defect. They will then issue the builder a rectification of work, and that gets recorded on your license. And then it gives you a nice table, and it gives complied or non-complied, or you didn't comply. And then when you do that, you as a buyer or anyone can see the builder had an inspector inspect the house and there was a defect. That's okay, and it goes on your license. I understand that could happen if it was a misinterpretation. Still, you should be building to a standard to the QBCC code, so that shouldn't happen. But let's just say you had a misunderstanding. The next opportunity the QBCC gives you is now you've got to fix it, and now you've said no. That gets recorded on your license, and buyers can see that. So if you're concerned, are they going to do a good job? Are they actually going to fix it? Have they previously done it? You can see on the table if they've actually had this issue.
So what's a defect?
Basically a defect, once again, I'm not going to use the exact terminology here, but basically a defect is based on the construction code of how something should be built to they call it a standard, and to how that's been built to standard, it either has been built to that standard or it hasn't. And if it hasn't been built to that standard, it's then a defect. And that defect gets noted on, again, normally you would do it as a PC inspection with your supervisor.
PC being?
Practical completion, the house is finished, you're going to inspect it to make sure all the works are done, and can you as the owner find any defects in the property?
Mm-hmm.
But the supervisor goes around with you to pick those items. So what a lot of...
So defects can be like minor or major. So it might be,
Correct.
just some painting needs to be fixed up.
It's simply down to there's a chip in the wall.
Yep.
And the painter needs to come back to fill that chip in the wall. That's a defect. Down to the door handle's missing.
Yeah.
Defect.
Yeah.
Downpipe missing on the house outside. Defect. But
just a bit. Yeah.
right? But like that's what it would call under a defect. So what buyers do and what we do that's very different is we actually have our own quality assurance inspectors internally, but as a control measure in the business to make sure we're delivering quality, we use an external defect inspector.
Mm-hmm.
Now, a lot of buyers get defect inspectors themselves,
Mm-hmm.
but even from my point of view, we get one regardless because a lot of people might not know to get one. So I want someone out to come and check our work. I'm happy to open the door and let them in, where a lot of builders would shut the door and go, no, we don't want that. We welcome them come in. If we're proud of our work, come and actually see it.
So most builders don't have an external inspector come through.
I don't really know many that do, no.
Yeah, okay.
Because it's an extra cost to the business, and for their point of view, they may pick things. The builder might go, oh, you're being too picky, or...
So why do you do that?
Yeah. I do that as a control measure
Okay.
for clients and myself. So every house being built, we make sure it's up to the standard that I think we're building them at.
Okay.
I really want someone to come in and see. How we do it is we have a supervisor that does their own quality assurance inspection. Then we have our construction manager that does one. And then we have an external inspector that has one. And it's just about improving staff and training them to be the best they can possibly be. Because they might be really good on some areas, but they might not be good. And depending on the type of house you might be building, you might not be as experienced, and the construction manager might be giving you advice on as well, but you might be doing things that aren't the standard where the inspector can come along and give that advice. So we very much welcome it. A lot of people, some of the staff are like, oh, he's going to come and have a go at my job. I'm trying to make it perfect and he's never happy with it. It's nothing to do with that. We just want to actually have more training, and how can I have internal training and external training by a specialist that just does this every day. They see hundreds of homes a year. They're trained to the code. They know it better than anyone. Let's get them there on every single house. I think it's a good control measure for me, knowing regardless of the supervisor and construction manager as well, we're having someone else check our work that we're proud of. And if we think we're doing a great job, let's get someone to check it instead of just going, no, we're doing a really good job.
All right. So to try and sum up this section in a little pretty bow.
Once again, we keep going deep into it, but I feel like it gives a lot more context to it. But yes, you can go on the license itself. Yeah.
So you go license, QBCC website.
Mm-hmm.
It will bring up a report. On the report, the thing to look out for is not just the defects. So defects will happen from time to time, like as in, oh, you needed to fix up a bit of painting. So it's not about that so much. It's more about, did they comply with it? Did they fix it?
Well, one, it should have never have got to the... When you see it on the license, I believe that it should have never have got to the QBCC.
Should have been fixed beforehand.
The clients reached out to the builder and the builder's done the inspection. We should have fixed it.
Gotcha. And
so
then,
it's never actually lodged. Because it shouldn't... So like what... See, my question would be, if I was the owner wanting to build a house with me, and this builder's got multiple of them, have you just refused to fix these items requested by the clients? Because that means they've gone to you, as you typically would, and then you've got no result. Then you've had to go to the QBCC, lodge a complaint, and then the builder's inspected and said, yes, it is a defect, and then that goes on your license. So to go through all those steps and to end up on there, I don't comprehend that. You have the opportunity to fix it. And then,
Do you ever have circumstances where a client just goes direct to the QBCC or do they have to go through?
I haven't had it. And if the QBCC was to call me about it, I would do an inspection because I was unaware of it.
Gotcha.
But I've never had that.
Yeah. Okay. So,
and once again, I think that's part of communication and the system that you put in place with staff after handover that they have communication with someone, and your manuals and your processes are very clear. This is who you contact for these queries. We're very open about it. We give them all the contact people, and we have someone that looks after them after the home journey as well. As a part of our service, they've got a portal after they build a house, not just a portal when they're building a house. They get looked after that stage. So if you lodge any inquiries, concerns, you've got open communications, not just, we built the house, we're gone.
Yeah, so it's almost like you didn't have if you did go direct to the QBCC, it's because you didn't feel like you had a good enough relationship with the builder where you could go to them. So seeing defects on there, numerous defects, you would suggest is probably a problem.
It's going to start telling you about the quality. I'm not saying that they can't build the house, but how's the quality of the home, which is what the buyers are concerned about. I want a really good house. And this leads me into what you were mentioning before. I know we're going on a few items here, but the next stage that sort of goes into is the pricing of homes.
Yep.
And I feel that there's a massive change over the last couple of years. And you were just saying it before about the cost differences with builders. I really believe, and I've built my business on this, buyers don't actually want the cheapest build. Okay. They don't. If you have points of difference and you have service, buyers that can afford more will actually spend it. Mm-hmm. If you have a house, 2 builders that you can build with, and one's 10 grand more or not, you need to understand what are the differences though. And I'm not just talking about the specifications if they are the same. Let's just say they are the same. Can you provide the timelines, the service, the experience? People will pay for it. And like you said about being there in the future, is being the cheapest the best option for you? I would question that. And I think a lot of buyers out there, once again, don't go pay more if you don't actually understand the value that you're getting, but you've then got to provide the service. You've then got to provide the value. You can't just charge more and go, oh, well, I'm just more for no reason. This is where I see the market changing, like whereby, and this leads me into, again, builders misrepresenting the full, and then I'll let you pull it apart. Builders always, as well, trying to appear cheaper, so they remove a lot of items from the contract, a lot of inclusions that you're not aware of, because you're over.
This irritates me. This is you've started me. Builder clickbait is the bane of my existence.
Yes,
anyway.
and part of that is in the client's defense of not understanding and comparing apples with the other actual apple instead of an orange is, they give you so many inclusions on so many pages, but what it makes it hard to do for a buyer is trying to pick the items that aren't there.
Yeah.
Because you've got so many included, you essentially think, oh, well, it'd be the same as the other one I'm looking at, but it's not.
What's some typical things that aren't in... before I ask you that, when I say builder clickbait, what is reasonably common practice is for people, I try and avoid talking disparagingly about other businesses because I just don't think it's good form. But I got to say, each business has a different model and they specialize in different things. Yep.
But what we're talking about is the representation.
Correct.
Of what you're getting is what my concern is with. Yeah.
So very common practice is for images of Rolls-Royce homes to be put up online, along with pricing that isn't necessarily representative of the images, but also doesn't include everything. So, it's not unusual for a buyer to have to spend 50 to 100 grand more to get what they thought they were going to get in the first place. And I mean, basics aren't included, like basics like driveways, fences, turf, landscaping, let alone what's inside, which is the inclusions. So, and the express purpose of those ads is to get you, the potential customer, to click on it And so often, like, I mean, I've told customers to do it. I'm like, you go and ring that person and try and get that block or get that house. And they ring up and they're like, oh, that one's gone, but now we've got this. And the industry term, and there's literally a term for it, is clickbait. It is bait to get you to click, call, and then they have a name for it as well. They call it bait and switch. So we will bring you in with this, and then we'll switch you to that. And it's particularly for first home buyers, but for everyone, it's confusing.
Yep.
Anyway, I just wanted to clarify what I was talking about. But you were... Carry on, sir.
Sure. I don't know where I was.
I think we're talking about the inclusion. So the question...
Look, I think... Yeah, sorry. I do remember. I was just mentioning that, a client will get a list of inclusions, so that it looks like there's a lot there. Mm-hmm. But the tough job, and if you're inexperienced, you've got to try and work out what's missing. And it's not just external item, big ticket items. Like picking a driveway is not included is probably going to be pretty clear.
Yep.
But when you get down to the finer details of things, you're going to start missing things. And even for me, if someone sends it to me and tell me what's the difference between yours and theirs, I've got to go through what a standard list is, and then I don't see what's included. I got to see what's missing. That's going to tell me real quick. I don't bother about what's included first. I go like, well, what's not in there? And then I can work my way around it. So a typical item that's not like typical items that clients overlook all the time is small things like fans. A big one is security screens on windows. It's fly screens, but to you as a buyer or someone else to another builder, that's like a $3,000 or $4,000 cost, just not included. Mm-hmm. It's a small item. If you don't want security screens, fine, but a lot of other builders have that as standard, and you've got a builder that's not. So it adds up. I wouldn't even think
to look for that.
All the time.
Yeah.
It's one of the items that I see I'm like, well, yeah, okay, well, I can find $3,500 there. All right, let me go to the next one. Those items rack up really quickly. And that's just where experience and, once again, you're just going, oh, look at all these items. They've got ducted and they've got a front door and all the, and they've got tiles. Like, yes, that's great. But because you're overwhelmed on that, you're missing these little tiny items that are $2,000, $1,000, $500, $3,500. It ends up being $20,000 that the other builders factored in for you.
Yeah.
So, and once again, you name big ticket external items, but it's actually the small ones that people miss more than I see anything else. So understanding that's really important. And
but how do I know? Like I'm a first home buyer. So I now know to look for a security screen, but there's got to be like 50 of these things. Yeah. So what do I do?
Well, that's once again, if I was a buyer, you would essentially, without going to other builders, you'd have to generate your own list of inclusions to make sure it's being ticked off. But trying to do that and understand what's included, you're still going to forget to that. If it was me, I would speak to
speak to us. Tell the people to speak to us, Tommy.
And I have to be careful here as well, because the term gets used very loosely. Is you're much better off speaking to a builder that does turnkey homes. And if the builder does turnkey 1, 2, and 3, it's still not a turnkey builder, because you can't have turnkey only means one thing. The house is ready to move in and everything's finished.
What do you mean by turnkey 1, 2, 3?
I've just seen different branding from, I like to say it's base price. Depending on the model of the builder, it can be base price building. So they'll give you a base price with the bare minimum. So no tiles, no driveway, no outside, just enough to make the house structurally finished. But all these items of $100,000, $150,000 are missing. That's what I call a base price builder. And the other builders are going, no. Instead of appearing $150 cheaper, we would rather just give you all that with everything included, so you don't have to worry about a thing. Because what buyers, and this is a common thing about houses having defects and buyers having to try and fix them themselves if they don't want to wait on the insurance. Once you have a loan and a mortgage, and a lot of you aren't saving anymore because your savings is going to the mortgage, you can't just pay for items to be added onto the home because you've got a mortgage that you're committed to now. So it becomes quite challenging for them because they don't have this loose amount of money if the mortgage was more than their previous rent and they were investing and they're putting more into this You don't have loose change to spend. So if the house isn't finished and you go, I'll do the landscaping later. Do you know how many clients do it later? And I drive past the house 2 years ago. 2 years later, still not done. The fencing's still not done. And once again, developers have an issue with this. So they'll put it in your land contract under your covenant guidelines that they'll give you a time frame that the landscaping has to be done. It's because they don't want their estates looking bad whatsoever. It doesn't look good for them if they drive in the street, the house is finished and no one has landscaping and a yard in. But buyers have done that to save on money. Now they're paying a mortgage and move in. They might not be able to save that money in the amount of time that they need. So developers that are in the new space are very aware of this. So they actually put conditions in there to make sure that you do it within a certain amount of time or they'll fine you. So it just, again, it's protecting that end thing. But, you know, buyers also go, oh, well, I'll spend the 20 grand later. It's like once you have the mortgage.
Yeah. Will you really? Yeah. It's also just complicated. Like you've got a lot going on as a first home buyer. You're often a new parent or about to become a parent. You're working full time. Probably both of you are working full time. You just got a new house that you've got to furnish. Like
following the new house, there's like a high statistic of getting a new car because you have security as a house, so you get cheap finance. So people then go and get a new car.
Well, yeah, we talk about your lending profile completely changes once you have a home. It's actually scary.
Because you have security for the bank's point of view. They can take things from you. They're going to give you better deals. So for the buyers out there that buy a new home, you are going to get people to say, go buy a new car, and your finance goes from a 13% interest rate down to 6%.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean that you go buy it. But that's a different conversation. But you know, these things happen to buyers and they end up in this situation as well. They end up spending more and more because then people go, oh, you've got something I can take. How can we take more from you? And you have to be careful of that. So going back to the builders and the separate inclusions and things like that, people just need to be very aware when they're seeing these prices. And if a builder... Look, if I put it this way, if a builder's going to use more of a sales tactic, and you said bait clicking, and then if you can't get a contract or a price up front, I would be concerned.
I would be very concerned.
If you need to, you know, just for me as a buyer shopping, can you tell me what the price of that house is? If you spend $2,000, and then after I spend the $2,000, you'll need to spend another 10 grand to get the contract and the real price. Yeah, but is that 12,000 refundable? No, but you haven't told me the price. So how do I know I can afford it? This is very common in our industry.
So I know what you're talking about, but for the listeners, what's this 2 grand and 10 grand that you're talking about?
Oh, look, I'm just stating certain amounts. I don't know if they're specific. No. But what it does is if you come in as a buyer and it appears 100 grand cheaper than everyone else, you think it's great.
Yep.
And you go, okay, well, I can afford that. And is it that house? Yeah, because it's once again, you still aren't aware that all these items aren't included yet at this stage, potentially. And then you go, well, I need a driveway to park my car on, and I need a garage door on to close it, and all these things start to come up and the pricing goes higher. And you're like, okay, Lee, I'll purchase this house from you for $300,000, no issue. Look, Tom, I actually can't give you a contract yet. I've given you they call it a tender sometimes, or a base price, the word would be.
Yep.
But I can't formulate the rest of the pricing. I thought it was, no, it's not. And I can't formulate the rest of the pricing unless you spend $2,000. Now, it could just be a $2,000 fee, or they would say it's $2,000 to go towards soil test. But my question is, if I'm a builder, and you've got 20 houses in that street, and that buyer's the one next door, you'd have a pretty good idea what the soil tests are going to be without needing to get one on my block. And not only that, factor it into the higher soil requirement then. Base it on the higher one that's not included that you haven't found in the street, just so I can have a price up front. I don't even want you to do the test. Okay, but what it does to the buyer, it's subconsciously committing him to a sales process. And you're taking money off someone, so they've got their $30,000 deposit. They can't afford to lose 3 or 5 grand on an exercise to find out the real price, or they might not be able to purchase their homes. And that's my problem.
So what you're saying is I go into a builder who seems very cheap, but they won't give me a final price. They'll give me a base price, which is a useless price. They won't give me a final price until I cough up some money. Yep. And that money they will have a reason for the money. Oh, I need to do soil tests.
And once again, it'll be something that doesn't make sense because it doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
And once again, we'll factor it in for a certain type and let me know what that is. What is the common one in this area? And if that builder's built 20 homes there, you're going to have an idea.
But what we're saying is the real reason the builder is getting you to kick up some money is because that then commits you to them and their sales process. And then they will add in all of the extra price to get the extra things that weren't included. And you're going to end up with
but not always the case. So they'll then give you pricing that's going to change and items added in. And they'll give you a tender.
Mm-hmm.
But then to get a contract from the price that you've seen, once again, this is just buyers that come to me that tell me about these different models. You then have to pay a $10,000 amount to get a contract. And then in that contract, you might find other items that have been added or missing. Because a piece of paper of a brochure or a tender or anything on a piece of paper that's actually not a contract is actually quite irrelevant to you. You can see a price of it, that's great. But until you actually have the contract, and then they make buyers pay for the contract. Where for our point of view, because what happens is then you're committed, and if you want to pull away and the contract's not what you thought it was, and things have now changed, you've now $10,000, $12,000 out of pocket that you can't get back. Yep. And that they say that's refundable, but then the terms and conditions state any administration fees will come out of that, and somehow it always ends up being the total amount that was paid to them. So that's where I have an issue, where for our point of view and for other builders is just provide the real price with everything factored up front, the true cost. The buyers aren't worried. They're happy to know what the true cost is. Just tell them. The other fact of that, following that point, is why can't you provide a contract up front? Mm-hmm. If you're really serious about it being the price and you believe that that's your values and morals and that's what you provide as a business, provide it to the buyer as no cost. It doesn't take long to draft it up. It's very quick. Yes, there's a bit of administration time, but if you're serious about the buyer and transparent and they have concerns, give them the contract. They'll check it with themselves, their solicitor, friends and family and their advisor or whoever they're working with. No problem, at no cost. If you're legitimately giving them the real price. And if there is pushback at that stage, I'd have concerns. So it's just, I know I'm touching on a lot of points here, but this is where, for me, getting down to the detail for a buyer to make serious decisions financially for the next 30 years, and not saying they're going to have the home loan for 30 years, they could not, they could do very well pay it off in 10. But what I'm saying is if you're going to make the biggest commitment and purchase in your life majority of the time, and people aren't willing to be transparent and give you what you're saying that you do, you can, this is the real price, why not give me the contract? I don't understand. And this is a huge red flag for me if I was a purchaser. But yet you want money from me. Now I understand if me as the buyer want to create my own design, I got to pay for a design up front for the builder or my own design company because I want to design a house. That's different. But if you're going to pick from a builder's floor plan that fits on that block and you just want to know the price because the builder has the price on that, that's their standard floor plan. There's different models and different ways to go about it, but there's no reason why you can't provide a price with the inclusions, be upfront, and then give them a contract. And that's the way that we operate, and that's why the business has grown substantially, because it's the difference that I've tried to make in the business is, and this is through the whole experience of the company, is I just got sick of people saying things, and I got sick of people say we do this, we do that. Like we hear the same story with multiple companies, but how many actually do it? And from my point of view, for me as a person in the role of operationally running the company, is I want to do what we say. And that's the big difference that comes down to the supervisors on site. If I say we're going to do it, we're going to do it. And if we're representing that from our marketing point of view, is that what we tell the buyers up front, then that's what I'm going to deliver. And That's a huge difference out there. We show them once again, we can go more technical, which we'll skip on because you guys have already gone into it, but we be transparent, very transparent in the business. Why not show the client? If we're going to do it, why not show them? And that's where I find the difference a lot. You say, oh, we do this. When it comes down to the technical terms, it starts changing. No, that's what I said it was going to be when that's what it is. And so we show our buyers, if that's the price you were given, that's the price you get, and that's the only price you pay. And the home's finished. If we have issues on site, that's our responsibility. We should have factored that in, full stop. But show them that at the start. So if I was, once again, if you want to build trust with people, just do what you're going to say, and it makes a huge difference for people out there. And once again, referrals, the business, the continual growth of a company, all of that comes into play. And I went deep there, but...
That is brilliant. For every person who has ever asked me, why does this look cheaper online? I mean, for future clients, I'm going to clip this up and send it out. No, it's the perfect answer though. Yeah. Because you've just encapsulated everything that we try and get across, but essentially they're not being upfront. That's really what it boils down to.
Hey, look, if a buyer was to send me a price $100,000 cheaper and it's the same house and spec, go for it. But get a contract. All my question is to them is, I said, sounds great. Everything you're telling me, request a contract. They won't give it to me. Okay. It's interesting. Right? So look, I think, and in the world that we live in and everything else, is there's so much clickbait around the world. There's so much distraction. Everything's external to us. But I think that we're in very unique positions now due to social media and due to the platforms available where, and I'm not trying to be nasty here, but you can no longer hide like you used to. If you did bad business, it was very hard for buyers to find out. Where now it's a lot easier to find that out, which is a great thing for businesses and people out there, because if you aren't doing the right thing, people find out. It's recorded somewhere. So I do love that aspect of, if you are doing the right thing, open the book. Just be open about it.
Well, it's stuff like this podcast, for example, right? So not if you're doing the wrong thing, but if you're doing the right thing, it's also easier now than ever before to get the message out. So we do things like this, and you can't fake it for this long. Like we can't have an hour and a half conversation or whatever it is, and you're faking the whole time. People can hear it.
Yeah.
And that's why I love that we've got this platform and we get to talk to people, because, we say we're great. Everyone says they're great. But I'm like, actually look under the hood. See our personality. See what we do. Because you can't fake the level of transparency that people get.
Yeah, I completely agree. And if you're doing the right thing, people know. If you spend enough time with them, you'll work it out. You can't hide the energy of someone if they're not doing the right thing. So, agree.
I agree. All right, let's start to wrap this puppy up.
Yep.
If there was one piece of advice, just one thing, that you could give to a prospective first home buyer to help them get into the market, what would be the one biggest, best piece of advice you could give them?
I probably have two answers for that. The other one I'll need to think about more. But the first one would not be related to property as such. My first advice to getting into your first home and doing anything, and that's going to lead you there anyway. My advice would be is work on yourself more than anything else. If you want a great home, a great family, a great life, work on yourself more than anything else. And then as a byproduct of that, you'll embody change and become something different. You'll change. Instead of being distracted, I think there's a lot of people that are high performers that work really, really hard. But if you don't work on yourself, it will only also get you so far, because a lot of people that work really hard that aren't doing very well in life. And I was one of those people that worked really, really hard, didn't get very far. But it wasn't until I started working on myself, investing on myself, where I really made that change. So when you're going to make massive buying decisions, like going to buy a new house or a property, if you do that work, you'll just, as a byproduct of working on yourself, you'll invest your money, you'll buy property, you'll buy your first home. Those will be, like, for me, it always stems, like I said, we're going deep on it, but it always stems back to who we are. And if we don't make change, or once again, we start buying a house and we pull out because we get terrified, none of that's going to happen if you're working on yourself. And I feel like that, for me, is more important than anything else, because I know what comes from that is everything else, without going way too far into it.
No. It's not going too far at all. As you think, so too shall you be. And again, shameless plug of my book. No, I'm kidding. But when I wrote that book, there is, 30-40% of it has got to be dedicated to having the right mindset. And we've spoken at length about this, but yeah, you begin within. You begin within, and then everything else falls into place. And all of the nerves, the procrastination, the all of that mental stuff that gets in our way, you've got to, if you fix that up first, it will give you the confidence and the courage to do the things that you've never done. And buying a home to live in is a massive piece of this. So you've got food, you've got to eat, and then the next thing is shelter. And providing shelter for yourself, and most importantly for your family, is, beyond food, is the single biggest thing that you can do. It's going to have the greatest emotional impact on you. Therefore, it's scary as hell to do it.
Yeah.
And in order to get over that fear, yeah, I agree with you. You've got to...
but you're on the journey and you self-sabotage.
Yeah.
And you're buying the house. Like, so say you get that far, then you pull out.
And how often do we see that? Where people just get in their own way.
They tell themselves they can't do it. And then once again, because it stems from nothing else externally, or you earn the money, you can afford it. And let's say you haven't bought the house yet, you're saving the deposit, and you need 30 grand, you have 25, you have 5 grand to go. That's up to you to save it.
Yeah.
You're not going to save the 5 grand, or you could waste it on weekends and you can go away for the weekend for the next 5 weeks and spend 5 grand. You can spend 5 grand in a week on stuff that you don't need. I'm going to buy the robot vacuum at home that I don't need. I'm going to go buy all these things that I don't need. But once again, that then is coming from you. Once again, are you not deserving to buy this home? Why is this? Once again, things will come up for you that are uncomfortable. But if you can overcome that, that's you growing and you having a huge change in your life. So is it going to feel uncomfortable? Yeah. Is it unknown to you? If you've never done it before, it's unknown to you. But how I talk to myself on a daily basis is I go, once again, if I'm in an environment of sometimes I stress myself out or I don't know something, I actually now come back to myself and go, oh, I'm creating something new I've never done before. This is where I actually want to be. I don't want to be a place that's always known, because nothing's ever going to change. So when something unknown comes to you, it does feel uncomfortable. You do feel like you shouldn't be doing it, or the universe says I shouldn't do it and something bad happened this morning and that's a sign I shouldn't buy the house. It's all of that story to keep you within this person of not growing. And this is the unfortunate part, where we have buyers over the years not purchase, and I have the same purchasers come back in 3 to 5 years and they're ready to buy, and the same property they wanted to buy and where they want to live, not only trying to buy there is 200 or 300 grand more, they actually can't afford it.
Yeah.
So they're moving 30 minutes, an hour further in a further area from the city or from where they were living. just because they didn't make a decision. They could afford it. They had the deposit. Everything was okay, but they got scared and things felt uncomfortable for them. And I understand that. But they can't afford that area anymore. And they buy now. Don't get me wrong. They come back and they buy. They go, I learned, but the ones that never come back, sometimes they never do. And I speak to them years later and they still haven't done anything. And I've got buyers that bought at the same time that have turned that house into investment, bought another house, or they bought another house and stayed in that one. They start scaling property. It's working well for them but what going again, my message finishing up would be, if it's unknown, that's where you want to be. But when that time comes that you've been hitting the pavement and you've been going, this is where I'm going to achieve all these things, and you get there and it's unknown to you, well, yeah, just consciously be aware that's what you asked for. You've gotten to that stage and you got to go, this is what I asked for.
Yeah, it reminds me of this thing someone said to me once, because I feel a heap of discomfort owning a business. Responsibilities for our staff, for our clients. I'm sure you go through the same thing. Mm-hmm. It's uncomfortable. The imposter syndrome's real. Mm-hmm. It's really real sometimes. It's
even real when it's not successful and you can be hard on yourself, but when it becomes successful, it's a different thing again. Yeah. So it's in the imposter syndrome. Once it's successful, you're like, oh, this is real. Yeah. Yeah.
But someone once said to me, they said, no one ever said to you it was going to be comfortable. Hmm. What they said to you was it was going to be worth it.
Mm-hmm. Yep. We'll leave it there.
Tommy Egan, thanks so much for coming in.
No worries.
Great to have a chat with you, mate.
Thank you.